Hello. The topic of the speech is the history of keeping time. Where did time telling come from? Let's make the journey through the history of time. The history points out three stages, from sundials to mechanical clocks to digital watches. The first stage includes measurement devices such as sundial, hourglass, and a water clock. Prehistoric men measured time with primitive methods, by simple observations of the stars, changes in the seasons, etc. Later, the more formal sundial was invented. It is a cast of shadow on the disk, and generally around this marked with the house like a clock. Then, this is how time is measured with the sundial. The hourglass was also used in the ancient times. It was made up of two rounded glass bulbs connected by a narrow neck of glass between them. When the hourglass is turned upside down, a measured amount of sand particles streams through from the top of the bottom bulb of glass. Today's egg timers are modern versions of the hourglass. Another ancient time measure was the water clock or clepsydra. It was an evenly marked container with a spot in which water egg timers dripped out. As the water dipped out, the container could note by the water level against the marking what time it was. The second stage belongs to a very important development when mechanical clocks, which used weight or springs, began to appear. This occurred in 1300s. At first, they had no faces and no hour or minute hands. Rather, they struck to bell every hour. Later, clocks with hour and then minute hands began to appear. Then, in 1656, Christian Huygens invented a pendulum clock, which used weight and a swinging pendulum. These clocks were much more accurate than previous clocks, off by less than a minute a day, compared with the 15 minutes a day of early clocks. The bigger the pendulum, the more accurate the clock was. In 1740, the British Parliament offered cash reward to anyone who could invent a clock accurate enough for use in navigation at sea. Thousands of sailors died because they were unable to find their exact position, and pendulum clocks would not work at sea. Then, in 1761, after 4 attempts, John Harrison finally succeeds at inventing a small clock accurate enough to use for navigation at sea. This tiny pocket watch lost only 5 seconds. The third stage consists of one of the most important events in the clockmaking. In the early 1800s, Elitary developed machines, patterns, and techniques that produces clock parts that were exactly alike, so they could be mass-produced from one clock to another. This drove the prices of clocks way down and allowed common people to own at least one. At the dawn of the 20th century, only women wore wristwatches. However, in the First World War, soldiers wore wristwatches because taking out a pocket watch to track the time was difficult, or better to say, impossible in battle. After the war was over, it was considered socially acceptable to wear wristwatches, and they became popular. Half a century later, digital watches, which tell the time very accurately, began to appear. And now, for thousands of years, different devices have been used to measure and keep track of time. But one thing is for sure, the competition and scientific rivalry resulting from various. Thank you.